The all-time great Frank Miller has revolutionized comic books in more ways than one, and more times than just one. One of the biggest ventures that he had that truly pushed comics to their limit in terms of just what you can do with storytelling, the artwork, but also production, was with Ronin in the 1980s, his first project with DC Comics. And I have this gigantic artist edition that I want to show you, where Frank Miller started using his influences from Goseki Kojima with Lone Wolf and Cub, as well as Mobius with his work in heavy metal. So stay tuned and watch this video until the end. And we're back. So this is Taylor. That's me of Taylor Talks Comics. Thank you for watching. Please give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. And comment down below with all your thoughts on Frank Miller, on Ronin, on artist editions, anything to do with comics, and I will reply to those. But yes, so this is Frank Miller's Ronin Gallery Edition from Graffiti Designs. This is what DC Comics has put out a lot of their artist editions through Graffiti Designs rather than IDW's artist edition. They've had a few things come out with. They've done both companies, but this one is a gallery edition, is what it's called, but it's ostensibly just an artist edition. And it includes every single page of Frank Miller's Ronin. This is one of Frank Miller's masterpieces. I feel like it's one of my favorite Frank Miller comics. Every time I read it, I enjoy it more, and it moves up my rankings of my favorite Frank Miller comics. I think it needs to be studied. I think it's an important part of comic book history and all those things. So we'll dive into those as we go. But show off the book a little bit. Here's the front cover. You see all the original art here on this piece. Here's the spine. You can see how thick this one is. It's one of the thicker, might be the thickest artist edition I own, actually, because it includes all 6 issues, every single page, and every issue was 48 pages long. So it was they're all, you know, longer issues than your usual. Just trying to make sure I get the shot correct there as I open this puppy up. All right, we open up, and here are the in papers. You get a cool, another original art piece, kind of blown up on gray paper. And you get an evolution of the DC logos, where they should have really stopped with the Milton Glaser piece and just ignored the rest, but I digress. And then here is the title page with another blown up original art image. And then here's another. Really, really beautiful package. I'm really happy with this. I think Scott Dunbier and everything he did over at IDW at the artist edition was beautiful. But I have to say, this is my second gallery edition from Graffiti. I had the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which I need to do a video on that one. Remind me in the comments to do a video on that one. But this, I have to say that I'm happy. I'm pleased. I think Graffiti did an amazing job with this. And actually, I had the Brian Boland Killing Joke one on the way as well, so that'll be my third. Table of contents, so you get created, written, and drawn by Frank Miller, colored by Lynn Varley, but we won't see any of Lynn Varley's work in this book at all, because it's all just the original artboard with the black and white artwork. And then lettered by John Costanza. Introduction by David Gibbons, and then it'll tell you where each story begins and ends if you want to flip to them. And special thanks for people that provided some of the original art pieces as they hunted them down. Really, really great introduction by Dave Gibbons, talking about the history of early 1980s comics and where Frank Miller wedged himself into the history of that decade, where you can't even write I don't know if you can write the history of comics without Frank Miller, but you definitely cannot write the history of the 1980s comics without Frank Miller's name. So he talks about that, and Dave Gibbons collaborated with Frank Miller on Martha Washington, and Dave Gibbons wrote this in 2014 after that collaboration, so they had a working relationship for a number of years on Martha Washington. And then you'll see the notes here about how this book was put together, how a lot of it was on 13 by 20 paper, which is the trim size of this book is 13 by 20. That's why it's so large. All the artist editions, if you didn't know, are done to the size of the true original art. Some of the pages were done on 11 by 17 artboard, but the biggest paper was 13 by 20, so that's why they kept it there, and you'll see that as we go on. And then some of the pages they could not track down. So this does include every single page of Ronin, but it does not have, it's not all scanned from original art, because there were a few pages here and there, namely the covers like you'll see right here, not scanned from original art. I don't know if you can see that on camera. Oh, maybe I need to move it up a little bit. Not scanned from original art. And it'll tell you that if it's not original scanned art. And you can see it's just a black and white copy. But most every page in here is scanned from original art. But they wanted the pages they couldn't find, they wanted to put something in there so you can still read this. You can still read the entirety of Ronin in this format, as if someone handed you the original art pages and you wanted to read it like this. Similar to like the Batman Year One Artist Edition by David Mazzucchelli, and some other ones. I had the Frank Miller Daredevil Artist Edition, which I've done a video on, but that didn't include any full complete stories, because a lot of those art pages they were not able to find. So some artist editions you can sit down and read as a story, and some you can't. So, but this one you can, which is really cool to be able to read it this way. So if you're not familiar with Ronin, it is Frank Miller taking everything he loves about samurai martial arts movies and Goseki Kojima's Lone Wolf and Cub, and intermixing it in with everything he loved about European comics, with Mobius being the big influence. So this comic is part samurai tale, part cyberpunk, and this is where you get into it. So here's the first opening, like 10 pages or so, well, I guess 12 pages, are telling the story of who the Ronin is and who the demon is that he's going after throughout the rest of the tale. So when you get to page 12 here, you see the Ronin is a masterless samurai. So there's a samurai that has no master. Originally, Lord Ozaki was the Ronin's master, but he died on his watch. So now he feels the guilt of that weighing on him and has to avenge his death. That's like his one true goal at this point. And you see him speaking to his master through the statue, and then the eyes fade out into this image, which is a really cool page transition. And now we get into the cyberpunk Mobius type style artwork. So it's really cool that Frank Miller, this was back in 1983, 82, 83, I think. And Frank Miller is working in two different styles throughout this comic book. So this is like the Goseki Kojima Lone Wolf and Cub style. And then we're getting into the Mobius style. And I have to say, the first time I read this in my teens, I was kind of turned off by that. Like, I was so invested in the samurai story of the first 12 pages. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be great. And then when I got to here, I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? This is not samurai comics. Stick with it if you have the same experience. I think it was only until I read like the Incal and some more heavy metal comic books that I really appreciated what Frank Miller is going for. And then I fell in love with the story. And the samurai stuff does bleed through the entire thing. And it appears, in spots here and there, and they do really mesh by the end of the story. So this is a 2-page spread. There's a lot of 2-page spreads throughout Ronin, which is really great. I think it's one of the Jack Kirbyisms that Frank Miller really grasps. Because I think Jack Kirby is part of the soup that makes up Frank Miller's influences with his comics. And you can see it here with the 2-page spreads that he constantly worked on throughout his career. But this is not scanned from original art, this page. This one is, however, and this is done on duo-tint board. I'm not an art expert. I'm not an artist myself. But I think the way and someone please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But I think the way duo-shade board or duo-tint board would work is that it had like this chemical you could put on it. You could drip on it, and it would either, like, you'd have a chemical that would go like darker black or darker grays, and you could put it on there, and that's what gives you these like weird textures and colors throughout it. Something that Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird used a lot in their TMNT run, like the original TMNT run, which I think Ronin was a obviously Daredevil and Frank Miller in general were massive influences on TMNT, but I think Ronin in particular was a huge influence on Eastman and Laird. So this is not scanned from original art. So you can see like the original art pages too, if you're not familiar with artist editions. Like this one's a little bit yellowed. It could be because the paper they used was not archival, did not age very well. But it could be also that the person that owned this original page could have had it, you know, framed up where the sun was shining on it, or not preserving in a good way. So you'll see certain pages that are more yellow than others. And some of the other aspects of an artist edition that you like really look for and appreciate are like the anytime you see the artist making corrections. This is stuff you'll never see on the actual fully printed, final printed copy. But you can see he whited out this panel border here and then redid it. The lettering board right here, or the lettering bubbles here that John Costanza did, he might have whited out that a little bit. And sometimes you'll see full panels that are whited out and redone, or full figures. So I flip through here, I'll see if I notice any more. But here's some more of that Goseki Kojima Lone Wolf and Cub action, using the tall vertical panels. That's one of the coolest things about all the splattering techniques here too, because Frank Miller was inking himself on this too. So like when he goes on to do Dark Knight Returns, Klaus Janson is inking him. This is all Frank Miller artwork that we're seeing, and Klaus Janson did a lot of his Daredevil work as well. But one of the coolest things about just flipping through this, you can see, oh, I'm glad they have this original art piece, because I'm assuming that this was probably one of the biggest ones that someone wanted to collect. This is where the samurai, the only way he can kill this demon is if he has the blood on the sword of an innocent soul first. So he stabs himself, and through himself stabs the demon. This was a homage in Rob Liefeld X-Force run. And I'm sure it's been homaged by other people as well, but really, really cool piece here. But as I was saying, one of the cool things about flipping through this is seeing all the different techniques and styles and panel layouts and the way that Frank Miller's style, like whole art style, was evolving throughout the process of this book. It's all on display here. See, this is an interesting piece right here because this is an original art, and it's not so yellowed in the middle here, but it is on the edges. So I wonder what happened there, whoever owned that piece. But the Ronin project in general, oh man, I love all this too. So this guy's arms are being blown off here, and he has like cybernetic arms. Billy is the character here. And they're splitting off into all these wires and tech and stuff blowing off here. It's just so cool to be able to see that, all those little details. And then there's the image we saw on one of the title pages. There's an explosion with him in the middle. But Ronin's an important project for DC. I'm sorry, I keep getting distracted. This is a 2-page spread of the decaying of New York City. So it takes place in an 800-year time difference, Ronin does. The samurai stuff in the beginning is 800 years ago, and this is 800 years later in a decaying New York City that's just like filth, and it's this dystopian future, and that's where you get the cyberpunk stuff. And you'll see these 2-page spreads where it's just where you see like the progression of the decaying of New York. But I digress. So this is an important project for comics, and why it's so impactful is that Jeanette Kahn, I can't not scan from original art, unfortunately. That's a great piece. Jeanette Kahn was the publisher of DC Comics that came in, and she really shook things up. And I think Jeanette Kahn is probably, I think, the most underrated figure in comic book history, especially when you're talking Big Two comics, because she doesn't get enough credit, and she had such an impact on DC Comics, which then had such an impact during her time there on the future of comics. We would not have Watchmen, we would not have Ronin, we would not have Vertigo Comics, we would not have Dark Knight Returns, all these things without Jeanette Kahn. She came from another publishing company, and I want to say Scholastic, but I'm not entirely sure. But she came in from another publishing company and came to DC. Here's that duotint board too, showing the decaying of New York. So he did some splatter ink on top of the duo shape board to show that off. And you can see that the image is smaller because I think it's the paper he took sideways to do the 2-page spread. But she came with the idea from her publishing company, Jeanette Kahn, that there's always, a good publishing company always has these kind of art projects where they know they're going to take a loss on it throughout the year. But the idea is to make them an experimental, whether it be in the format that you're printing in, whether it be with the art style, the writing style. artsy kind of projects that you want to take chances on. This is almost looking like Frank Miller's Sin City right there. This imagery right there, even though it's like 10 years before Sin City. And like every year you should know you're going to take a loss on these certain projects, but you're held up by the bigger ones. So in terms of DC, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, those are going to hold you up. Those are your tent poles. They're going to hold up your company to provide you the opportunity to do a more experimental project. And the idea is, through these experimental projects, you then grow the company in progression, whether it be with art styles introduced to your audience, or whether it be printing techniques, format techniques, all these other things that will then, you'll bleed in and use it with your tentpole projects like Batman, Wonder Woman, etc. Prime example, Ronin was this very experimental project. It didn't do so good on sales. I think with reprints over the years and things like this and the Absolute Edition and trade paperbacks and everything else that's been kept in print, it probably has made its money, twofold. But when it was originally printed in single issues, because like it's a weird format too for DC, is single issues, but they're 48 pages. I think they were square bound even, and it was direct market only. It was this character Ronin that was not a main character, was not Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, Superman, anybody well known. So it didn't do so well in sales. But Frank Miller then took all these techniques and ideas and things over to The Dark Knight Returns, which is one of the best-selling comic books of all time. They made their money over twofold from that. Would we have gotten Dark Knight Returns without Ronin? Nobody knows, but maybe not. The way this project came about was that Frank Miller was coming off of his Daredevil run with Marvel, sat down with Jeanette Kahn, and Jeanette Kahn's like, what do you want to do? What's your dream project? And that's just one of the ways that Jeanette Kahn operates too, is like, she wants to get the best out of her creatives by like wanting them to go and strive and achieve for their their ultimate goals. And Frank Miller's like, I really want to do a samurai story. And Jeanette Kahn, I guess, was a big fan of samurai movies and samurai lore and everything as well. What is horse? Artists always say horses are one of the hardest things to draw in comics. And Frank Miller always nails it. Just wanted to point that out. Here's a vellum page. So this is where there's these frames on the original comic where it's supposed to look like a film frame that they're watching. And this is supposed to be like the panel when it's breaking out of the film frame. These are the panels of the people talking about what they're watching. And then they wanted to do duo-shaped paper over the actual film strip parts. So they would do, on the original art piece, it just looks like this with the blank film strip panels. And then over the top of it, they laid this for the final piece. Same thing on this side. Yeah. So it's really cool that they included that in there too. Yeah, but Jeanette Kahn was all on board, and they let Frank Miller do this. Here's another one. Totally do this whole project. Totally what he envisioned. Totally his dream. They let him pick the paper stock quality, the way it's formatted, the coloring process, and Frank Miller's part of that all of that whole process. Because of that, they were able to take that on to other projects in the future. But they had almost no interference. It's like Frank Miller's first time in his career. He was able to completely do his own thing with no interference at all. And that's very freeing for an artist, obviously. Here's one where he completely whited out the figure. He didn't like the way he drew it the first time and then drew on top of that. That's one of the cool characteristics of seeing these. So yeah, it's again, props to Jeanette Kahn. She was amazing for comics. And should be celebrated more. Here's I think this might have been re-inked. I don't know what's going on here with this page. Or maybe redrawn. Oh, previously unpublished earlier version, page 19. Okay, so this vellum piece was the original page that he drew, but then he redrew the entire page. So we're seeing you can compare and contrast how it looked originally, and then lay it over the top, and you can see underneath how he changed the whole page. It's interesting. There's not a ton of change there, but for whatever reason, Frank Miller didn't like the way he drew that first time. I can look at all this detail right here too. Frank Miller is really on working on another level of this project. True passion project. And then we're getting a little bit into the Goseki Kojima area here. This guy's getting his hands cut off. But Ronin's an incredible comic. I would not recommend that this be the first way you read Ronin. Oh, that's an amazing piece. Look at these motorcycles against the horse. Because Lynn Varley's coloring technique, this is totally ripped out of Sin City. Like, this is Frank Miller working out this style, is him figuring out what he wants to do for Sin City. But Lynn Varley's colors is amazing too, because her coloring really works blends the two different eras. Like, like her color helps you realize what era you're in, what year you're in, whether it be the 800 years ago samurai part of the story, or the 800 years later cyberpunk Mobius type style. Her colors really sell that. So I'd recommend, if you're reading Ronin for the first time, read it in a collected edition or something. Oh, I think this is my favorite cover from the whole series, and they actually have the original art. That's really cool. And then if you're a huge fan, if you'll fall in love with it like I did, then I'd recommend getting this, because this is a true masterclass. Having every single page in here and just seeing his art progress throughout it. Again, the decaying of New York in progression. It's just such a fun story and such a mashup of genres. Really, really incredible. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on Frank Miller, on Ronin, on artist editions, or anything of comics in the comments down below. I'd love to talk to you. Please subscribe. I'm on the road to 3,000 subscribers. I would love it if I could get there relatively soon, and I need your help for that. Giving the video a thumbs up, commenting, sharing the video around wherever you talk comics, on Facebook or Reddit or whatever. All those things will help me get there eventually. Here's this fold-out piece too. So it's like folds out into 3 pages. I can't get this on screen, but just so you can see the color there. It must have been something that Lynn Varley colored right on the board. Yeah. So please give this video a thumbs up, comment down below, all those things, and I will talk to you later. But keep talking comics, guys. Thank you so much.